Thank you. On behalf of the Associate Alumnae of Douglas College, I welcome you to a celebration of Adelaide Marcus Zagoren. I'm Jean Fox, I'm president of the Associate Alumnae. I want to recognize first Adelaide's family who is here, her sister Ruth Marcus Pat, her daughter Laura Zagoren with Karen, and also on the dais here we have the Chancellor Party, the President of McCormick, Richard McCormick, Dean Mary Hartman, and Dean Ellen Lieberman. I think everybody here knew and respected Amira, and even about today you can hear a little bit about her notable leadership, not just at Douglas, but also in the community. So today we are celebrating Adelaide Zagoren in a joyous manner with her friends who will provide some uplifting reflections. Adelaide Marcus Zagoren grew up in Highland Park. New Brunswick was also her hometown, and was very active, not just here in the college and university, but also in the community. For instance, Girl Scouts, State Theater, other things that I was involved in. I lived in New Brunswick, where I would see her and work with her, first as a student, then as an alum, and then also in some other organizations. And I personally grew to admire her leadership and appreciation for things such as girls, with Girl Scouting and at Douglas, and for the arts. So you'll be hearing about how she's helped, and her family's foundation, the Laurie Foundation, has helped so many organizations. As I said, I knew Adelaide since I was a student here from 7 to 75. In fact, to me, Adelaide Zagoren was the Associate Alumnae of Douglas College because she served from 1968 to 1994, over 26 years, as an executive director. And she really transformed the organization into what we are today due to her foresight, her strength, and her really hard work and dedication. Adelaide Zagoren always saw the big picture. She was a visionary. She was very strategic. She knew how to get along with people with her people skills. She was very caring, but she was extremely practical. These skills served the AADC and Douglas College well through several major changes. The university administration made changes, we all grow and move on. Centralization of student services, reorganization of the colleges, and even before that, the co-education of Rutgers College, where she fought with Dean then Mordred Summers Foster to keep Douglas single-sex. In each of these critical junctures, our executive director, Adelaide Zagoren, worked hand-in-hand with the deans to preserve the essence of Douglas College, providing quality higher education to New Jersey's women. So I personally thank her for that, and I think all of us who love Douglas do as well. Now I ask you to stand and join with the Voorhees Chapel Choir, singing the New Jersey College for Women, which is what Ruth and Adelaide graduated from in 1940, the alma mater. Please stand.
Thank you.
to hear from Valerie Anderson, class of 81, the Executive Director of the Associate Alumni of Douglas College. Valerie?
Good afternoon. Her name was Adelaide Marcus Zagoren. It was a name that I had heard, knew of her reputation, but did not really know the woman. I became the Executive Director at the Associate Alumnae of Douglas College on March 7, 2011. I was not fully aware of the journey that I was about to embark upon, nor the encounter that I was getting ready to have with none other than Adelaide Marcus Zagoren. I guess you can tell I love to say her name. Upon getting to know her, I understood why I liked to say it so much. There was strength in her name, honor in her name, grace in her name, history in her name, leadership in her name, and the love and commitment to Douglas in her name. I think I was in my role as the Executive Director for about 4 days when I was scheduled to have lunch with Adelaide Marcus Zagoren. At one of her favorite restaurants, if many of you had the opportunity to dine with her, it was Sir John's in North Brunswick. What I soon learned was also her mobile office. But once again, I was not prepared for what I was about to embark upon. When I arrived, we arrived at Sir John's about the same time. And here comes Adelaide Marcus Zagoren. Impeccably dressed, gracious, and I was feeling like a student getting ready to meet her teacher for the first time. Lo and behold, we had a wonderful lunch, we did. But I have to tell you, it was 4 hours later that I left her. Meeting with her, I left with marching orders about the AADC, the importance of alumni travel, her wisdom, of course, but most of all, I left with the support and a new friend. I got back to my office and I had to digest all that she shared with me, because if you've been with Adelaide, you know you're going to get a lot. I had an encounter with Adelaide. My encounters continued with her. She was someone I felt like I had known for years. She was someone I could call on for honest advice and genuine support. When we spoke, she understood. We shared the same role as Executive Director of the Associate Alumnae of Douglas College. I did not have to get my whole sentence out. If I was talking about a particular issue, she knew exactly what I was thinking of and what the issue was, and she started to speak for me. Adelaide always made herself available. I could call her, and I could visit with her at her home in Rossmore and even at Stonegate. I have to share a story with you that is so Adelaide. Adelaide had moved to Parker's at Stonegate in Highland Park. And you know Adelaide, she loved being independent. So it wasn't a move she was very happy about. But I wanted to kind of make her feel at home, and so I had called her and asked her if I could come and visit, and I would bring one of her dear friends, Evelyn Sermon Fields. She was so excited, I said yes. And come and, Adelaide, we'll have lunch together, we'll have a great time. We arrived, Evelyn and I, and we got there and we did share some time with Adelaide in her new apartment. After that, she had to be Adelaide. I want to take you on a tour. Stonegate. So Evelyn and I proceeded to follow her. Well, I watched Adelaide be Adelaide. She knew everybody. Everybody knew her. She was directing and leading and doing all the things that Adelaide does. After that, it was time for lunch. We went into the dining room. And Adelaide stood there, and I watched her, as I always did, because she was my mentor, and she gazed around. I'm wondering what she was doing. The next thing I know, she moved this one, this one, this one, this one. She had people were sitting at the table eating their lunch, and she wanted to move them. She had to move their chairs, she had staff move it, they picked up plates, she was arranging the table that she wanted for lunch, and she knew the people she wanted at the table. Adelaide, I said, Executive Director, are you the mayor? Are you the president? People, and what's so interesting about her is that when she speaks and she asks, people move. They move. Remember, Adelaide Adelaide was being Adelaide. And I knew not to say anything, because if you know Adelaide, she's a little stubborn, right? So you just let Adelaide go. And so I think that epitomized to me what Adelaide and who Adelaide was. After our tour, we went back to her room and we spent some time talking again. And it was this thing that I enjoyed always spending time talking to her about. We talked about many things. And, alumni travel, as I said, was one of the things that Adelaide loved to do. And she talked to me a lot about that and also gave me a lot of direction. But, one of the things that I was saying, leaving there with her today, I was like, that's my girl. I love the way Adelaide conducted herself. I love the way Adelaide could be. And I was like, when I grow up, I want to be just like Adelaide. For those of you who may be experiencing Douglas for the first time, it is here where Adelaide spent her time. And after she graduated, she said she never wanted to leave. And lo and behold, she really never did. Adelaide loved Douglas and really never tired. During her last few months, I did have the privilege to visit with her in the hospital and even at the rehab facility where she was. I have to tell you, and Flora, where's Flora? Flora can attest to this. We would go to visit her, and Flora would go at different times than I'd be there, but she'd always want to conduct some business. She was up in Hackettstown. She had Flora would bring the alumni list. She wanted to know what alumni was in Hackettstown. Now here she's in the rehab, but she wanted to know what alumni were in Hackettstown. So I said, I don't know what you think you're going to do. Adelaide was going to find some way to make some connection. She was always about business, always wanting to do something. I'm like, Adelaide, this is the time for you to be focusing on you. Nope, not Adelaide. She's all the time thinking about how she can help Douglas College and serve the AADC. Adelaide is responsible for many initiatives and programs at the Alumni Association, some of which you will hear today and other speakers. As a former executive director, she would say, Valerie, you don't need to know everything, but you need to know how to get it and where to get it from. I was always like a sponge with her in her presence. I could not wait to share my experiences with her, who I met, and of course, the alumni travel trips. I enjoyed our times talking and just sitting there looking at her. I thought she was a beautiful woman, a graceful woman, and everything about her. She understood the value of being able to connect to alumni, and she taught me well. Right before her passing, I had returned from an alumni trip, which was a cruise celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Panama Canal. I could not wait to get back to tell her who I met and get her wise counsel, because we would always talk about that. It wasn't just about the trip. I could tell her about what happened in Panama Canal, but she wanted to know who was on that trip, who I talked to, what kind of follow-up things would be there. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to do that. My mentor, my role model, my friend, my alumna had made a journey. She had a different journey that she needed to take. On behalf of the executive directors that have served post-Adelaide, we all agree we learned from a pro. She brought great honor and respect to the position of executive director of the Associate Alumnae of Douglas College. I am honored to serve as a part of the AADC's Executive Director Club. The AADC and Douglas are great because of Adelaide. Her life and her legacy will forever be rooted in our rich history, and I will love that woman forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Adelaide taught me well. She's very proud of me right up and down. Now we're going to hear from the college, from Douglas Residential College, the Associate Dean, Ellen Lieberman. Ellen's going to talk about how Adelaide's service and commitment to Douglas and its women here continues to be felt by the DRC students via her funded lecture and her external program. Ellen?
Good afternoon, everyone. The Dean sent her apologies for missing this important event. She had family obligations for this date that were established well before this happened. Douglas today, but I want to tell you that I'm happy to read her remarks, and these are the remarks that Dean Litt has sent. Douglas today is strong and growing. In September, we welcomed a record number of new to Douglas women, totaling 603 incoming students of all ages. Douglas now has over 2,200 students enrolled, which is a record number of women. This high enrollment validates that students continue to value women's education as part of their overall Rutgers experience, and this underscores the continued importance of Douglas and the continued importance of the work that Adelaide did. I celebrate the college's success today as a tribute to the contribution that Adelaide made to the college during her long and outstanding career as Executive Director of AADC, as well as her gifts to the college. Adelaide was a compassionate and discerning leader. We had many conversations about her work as Executive Director. She was always at the forefront and adeptly led the AADC to its next phase. With Douglas Dean Mary Hartman, she led the first major fundraising campaign for Douglas, the 75th anniversary campaign. She was motivated first and foremost by a commitment to the women's education. She was driven to support student learning and their advancement. She supported the vision of leadership of Douglas College, working in partnership to create new and innovative experiences for Douglas students. Her vision was big. Just one example is the extern program. This program, which is very strong today and valued by students and alumni, provides an opportunity for Douglas students to work alongside of an alumna for 1 or 2 weeks. Adelaide's approach was to use this program as a career opportunity for students who could develop mentorship relationships and exposure to possible careers. At the same time, Adelaide saw these relationships as a way for the college to create ties to corporations and other workplaces, understanding that there is no better advocate for the value of a Douglas and Rutgers education than the students themselves. For many years, she arranged for a cohort of students to hold their externships with Johnson & Johnson, and I carry an image of her with the students taking J&J by storm. She also worked hard, she explained to me, to develop the AADC travel program. As an alumna herself, she knew that Douglas women are ambitious, value intellectual experiences, and appreciate travel. This program, as well as her other initiatives, were intended to provide valuable experiences to Douglas women. She spoke longingly of the time she and Laura traveled on these programs, and I know that both she and Laura developed lifelong friendships out of them. Adelaide touched people's lives. She left a legacy of times filled with laughter, discovery, and intelligent conversation. We also thank Adelaide for her vision in establishing the Zagoren Lecture, an annual event featuring remarkable and high-achieving Douglas alumni. Over the years, many proud Douglas women have returned to Trace Hall to celebrate their lives' work. Past speakers have included Susan Lester, an established filmmaker, and Mary Marchetta O'Dowd, Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Health and Human Services. Many of our Douglas students work with Commissioner O'Dowd in Trenton. Adelaide's contributions to Rutgers, Douglas, and her community guided her life. She served as president and trustee of the Blanche and Irving Laurie Foundation, which provided support for the arts, education, human needs, and Jewish causes for the greater Middlesex County area, along with generous support of Douglas and several other parts of Rutgers University, including Mason Gross School of the Arts. The last time I saw Adelaide was in her room at the rehab center. I relieved her from a bingo game, she told me, which had not quite given her the intellectual challenge she had come to expect in life. We talked for a long time. She was so grateful for her daughter Laura and all she had done to help her, and her sister Ruth, who was coming to visit the next day. And you won't be surprised to learn that I ended up going grocery shopping for her visit with Ruth and sneaking her a Panera salad for dinner that night. Always a resourceful leader, she delegated responsibilities to me to get that dinner. I was humbled that she trusted me to help her in this way, and smiled because I saw, once again, that familiar spark in Adelaide's eyes. She was an amazing woman and leaves an important legacy at Douglas.
Mary Hartman, Dean Mary Hartman, was Dean of Douglas College from 1982 to 1994. That's a long time. But as I said, Adelaide was Executive Director for 26 years. Interestingly, both left in 1994, the same year, which I consider the special era of Douglas College, with the two of them in town, with Louise Deuce, who was the Associate Dean, and Nancy Richards, who was the Dean of Students at the time, all left in 94. So Mary Hartman, who really worked hard and collaborated and had a lot of fun with Adelaide Zagoren, will say some words about her friend.
Thank you very much, Jean, and hello to everyone. Some things never change. One is the beauty of this chapel. The other is the terrible sound system. I love Valerie's wonderful tribute in the Alumnae newsletter. Can you all hear me? Yes. Sounds good. To the woman we are celebrating this afternoon, she recalls not only Adelaide's long list of achievements and gifts, but her special qualities and her commitments as a leader in so many contexts, including the family, the college, the community, the arts, Jewish causes, and of course the area of alumni relations, where she was a superstar, we all know. I enjoyed Valerie's reminder, too, that Adelaide and her gifted twin sister, Ruth, arrived as freshmen on campus in 1936, and Adelaide said her reaction was, "I never want to leave." And as Valerie said, in all the senses, almost all, alas, she hasn't left. She's in our minds, she's in our hearts, she's in our recollections. Anyway, compared to Adelaide and Ruth, I was a latecomer at this place, as I didn't turn up on the banks until 1968. Now, to some of you, that's a long time ago, but that's fresh compared to Adelaide and Ruth. A junior faculty member in history, my first memory of Adelaide was her impressive performances in the faculty meetings that our then Dean Marjorie Foster actually insisted that we all attend those meetings or else. Adelaide would urge us all to participate in the upcoming reunions or invite us gently but firmly to give scholarship gifts or to teach in the new honors program. We had one first, by the way, or to serve on a committee, or maybe all of the above. Adelaide herself was also new, in a sense, not to the college, but the role that I didn't realize that she had at that point was a new one for her as well as the one that I had for myself. And she was so incredibly destined to play that role magnificently for the next 26 years. As Executive Director of the Associate Alumni of Douglas, I hardly imagined back then either that Adelaide would take part in grooming 7 alumni directors, but also 6 college deans. And I certainly didn't imagine that one of those deans would be me, nor that Adelaide and a certain Lisa Hetfield, where is she? Right over there, yes, and I would team up on our first major campaign for the college in honor of Douglas's 75th anniversary, 1993. We zipped around the state and the country, and we raised over $12 million. Not bad for a first time, even though I am fully aware that the current campaign, of which Adelaide was named honorary co-chair back in 2010, when it began, has already garnered 3 times that amount, thanks to Valerie Anderson, to Dean Jackie Litt, to co-chairs Joyce Albert Schoenberg and Alice Herman, to staff, to alumni volunteers, and of course, to Adelaide herself. There's more, of course, but first, as old-timers here may recall, I have often cited Adelaide for the unofficial role but it was a very real one that she played in grooming at least one dean that you know. I can't speak for the rest of them. My excuse at the time was that to date, I was the youngest dean the college had ever had. 41, if you must know. But Carmen Ambar later captured that title. The fact is that in 1981, in an acting role, I was an incredibly green dean. I used to go around saying, I'm an acting dean in every sense of the word. Adelaide knew it. So she gave me a crash course in deanliness without making me feel like a slow pupil, at least most of the time. In fact, I was so grateful for her investment in me that I told people it all reminded me of Frank Sinatra's great song in Guys and Dolls. Some of you will remember. The one he sings, to Adelaide, Adelaide, ever loving Adelaide is taking a chance. Talk about your long shots, she's taking a chance on me. From MJC to DC to DRC, this college, with Adelaide's presiding spirit, kept its eye on an ever-changing but ever the same goal, and that goal is just this, opening doors for women. Linda Stamato got it right in a piece that she did celebrating Douglas's 95th anniversary in the Star Ledger last year. What makes the college stand out, she said, is that instead of planning for its own obsolescence, as ever fewer young women are choosing to attend standalone women's colleges, Douglas kept reinventing itself. It had to do it from the beginning, and that helped, I think. But in any case, the idea, and she realized this, was keep opening doors for women. And the message about opening doors, of course, had first been conveyed in the stirring words of Dean Mabel Smith Douglas in an address to students on the college's 10th anniversary in 1928. That message was still fresh when Adelaide and Ruth heard it in the 30s. It is our duty, the dean said. This is in 1928. To bring about an intellectual quickening, a cultural broadening, and connections with specific training so that women may go out into the world fitted not only for positions on the lower rung of the ladder of opportunity, but for leadership as well in the economical, political, and intellectual life of the nation. No small vision. Now, at first, the most obvious door closed to women was the door to public higher education, even though New Jersey men had been able to get degrees for decades at a public institution. Coeducation was not an option because at that point, the Rutgers trustees forbade it. So our founders, the New Jersey State Federation of Women's Clubs, got approval for a coordinate college on a Columbia Barnard model. Opening doors here then meant not simply going co-ed, it meant investing in a brand new women's college and with all the stuff that goes with it, faculty, staff, its own campus, and its own state budget. Women had to fight hard for that, just as women in the nation had to fight hard and even longer to get the vote. And in this place, they converged. They happened at almost the same time. You may not know that in 1915, in the midst of the fight for this college, a state referendum was held on women's suffrage. Guess what? 58% of the all-male electorate rejected votes for women. Knowing that lots of her members supported suffrage, the Federation president and her board told all the members, go out, champion that college for women, don't take sides on the suffrage issue. And they didn't. And it worked. the backdrop to the kind of activity that we see in Adelaide Zagoren. As two members of the next generation knew well at the time they heard all this and were aware of it, what effort it had taken to open this college in the first place that they loved so much. They just kept on with their lives, opening more and more closed doors to women. What a difference they made in New Brunswick and well beyond. Some years back now, I had an occasion in introducing Adelaide to compare her with George Bailey. Well now, if you don't remember who George is, you'll be hearing about him in the next few weeks because they always resurrect It's a Wonderful Life. And he's the hero of that. Now you remember, he's on the verge of suicide because his bank, and he's managing the bank, is suffering a real cash run. And what happens? An angel turns up. An angel turns up to take him on a tour of what his lovely town would look like without him having helped people build their own homes, create new businesses, live meaningful, productive lives. Now, it may be an exaggeration to suggest that New Brunswick would resemble Pottersville, overrun by all of those gamblers and pool halls and houses of ill repute without Adelaide. But we need to think of the multiplier effects of her support and encouragement of alumni now scattered not just throughout New Jersey, but throughout the world. In fact, those who are coming back annually, not only in reunions, but in the Adelaide Zagoren lecture series, share their lives and talk about how Douglas made a difference for them. One more thing. Throughout her lifetime of opening doors to women, Adelaide has hardly neglected having fun. Someone who noticed this trait of hers, a kind of joie de vivre that was infectious, is a new family member, son Bob's fiancée then at the time, Dr. Lynn Suzanne Tress. Dr. Tress has a great blog, and last February she introduced her readers to her future mother-in-law-to-be. Noting that she was on the way to the funeral, she says, "My future mother-in-law was a brilliant woman and a tremendous benefactor of her community of New Brunswick. She lived a full life of 94 years, and I believe she left nothing on her bucket list." Say a prayer for her today, Adelaide Zagoren. Perfect, I say. Perfect, you say. And then I imagine Adelaide replying, "Lovely, but not so fast. I just worked out a dispensation, and you all need to know I'm still working on that bucket list where I am now." Thank you very much.
Adelaide Marcus Zagoren and Mary Hartman. They had great times together, and it was an important time for Douglas, and they kept things going and did a great job moving us ahead. Our next speaker is Richard McCormick, President Emeritus at Rutgers University, and he'll talk a little bit about Adelaide's commitment to Douglas and to the associate alumni, but I think more importantly, some personal accounts of the McCormick family, his father Richard, his mother Catherine, and their relationship between the families. President McCormick.
Thank you, Jean. The first thing that struck you about Adelaide Zagoren was her cheerfulness, her friendliness, her openness. Whatever the setting or occasion, you were glad you encountered Adelaide. She attracted people to her, and her own attractive qualities were contagious. Her generosity of spirit stirred a spirit of generosity in others. Adelaide was an optimist, a doer, a giver, a role model, a healer, and a friend. Long and varied as her life was, certain themes ran through it like a thread of gold. the depths of her engagement with causes and institutions she believed in, the ease with which she rose to leadership positions, and the gratitude of those who followed her lead, the naturalness of her relationships with people of many kinds and diverse persuasions, the seeming effortlessness with which she became an exemplar and a mentor to many. And to what a remarkable range of roles and causes Adelaide brought those qualities of personality, of humanity, and of leadership. A journalist for the New Brunswick Home News in the days when that newspaper made a difference in this community. Executive Director of the Raritan Valley Girl Scouts Council, President of the Blanche and Irving Laurie Foundation, Board Member of the Circle in the Square Theater, the Jewish Foundation of Raritan Valley, the George Street Playhouse, and the Robert Wood Johnson University Foundation. Above all, and for a quarter century, she was the Executive Director of the Douglas Alumnae Association, a role to which I will return. What a breadth of values and convictions Adelaide expressed through these commitments, to the community, to its youth, to the arts, to healthcare, to her faith, and to education. Who among us can say they made a difference in so many realms of life and work? How lucky we are that she lived her life in central New Jersey and that she gave expression to all of these values and commitments right here in our place and time. Douglas College was always nearest to Adelaide's heart, and her loyalty to Douglas never wavered. She believed in its mission, she expressed the mission with feeling, and she exemplified it. Just count, if you can, the Douglas women she inspired over the decades and the Douglas things she did. Her long leadership of the Alumnae Association, her philanthropy, her deep engagement with deans, faculty, and students, her inspiration of the Blanche and Irving Laurie Chair in Women's Studies, and her devotion to the success of the Institute for Women's Leadership. Douglas grew and changed immeasurably from the college onto whose campus she first walked in 1936. To the institution it had become by the final years of her life. Adelaide steered cheerfully through and among the transformations of Douglas College without ever relinquishing her passion for it and above all for its students. About 25 years ago, when Mary Hartman was Dean of Douglas and Adelaide was Executive Director of the Alumnae Association, I was across town struggling to find my way as Dean of Arts and Sciences. Though I barely knew Adelaide at the time, I could not help noticing Mary's close relationship with her, Mary's frequent communications with her, Mary's reliance upon her. And oh, I remember wishing I had an Adelaide to help me, a sure guide to the larger worlds beyond the campus. But there weren't very many Adelaides. In fact, there was only one. Among the most important things that Mary and Adelaide discussed was fundraising. They recognized earlier than the rest of us at Rutgers how essential philanthropy would become to higher education in an age when state support for our enterprise was just beginning the downward spiral that sadly has persisted to the present day. Through the 75th anniversary campaign, Douglas College became a leader in fundraising at Rutgers thanks to Mary and Adelaide, and that leadership, too, has persisted to the present day. Over the years, Douglas and Rutgers rightly repaid Adelaide with myriad recognitions of her loyalty, her leadership, and her achievements. The Distinguished Recognition Alumnae Award, the Margaret Corwin Award for Alumnae Service, induction into the Rutgers Hall of Distinguished Alumni, and the Rutgers University Medal. No one has ever merited them more than her. Blessed with long years, Adelaide Zagoren used all of them and used them well. It is tempting to conclude that we will never see her like again. But I believe we will, because her example will live on among us. Remarkable as it may seem, and unbeknownst to us now, thankfully, there are 21st century Adelaides in the making, right here at Douglas.
Now, as you've heard, that Adelaide not just was into Douglas College and helped us out, was very involved in the community. And something of great importance to her were the arts, and you heard some of that. You're going to get to hear a little bit about that now. First, we will get to hear from George Street Playhouse, right here in New Brunswick, artistic director. He is also a Tony Award-winning Broadway director, and we have him right here at George Street Playhouse. We'll be hearing from David Singh. David?
Thank you. I met Adelaide, the amazing Adelaide, 18 years ago when I came to George Street to interview for the job. This woman sat at the table of the search committee, and as President McCormick said, she had this wonderful, engaging smile. But all these people were asking me questions about my background, my credits, my plans for the theater. And she sort of leaned forward with that lovely smile, and then she zapped you with those eyes. Those steely eyes that just looked right into your soul. And she said, David, I want to know, why are you in the theater? Well, you couldn't flinch from this woman, that was clear. So I looked right back in the eyes and I said, it's my religion. I believe theater can change people. And she leaned over and she shook my hand and she said, that's good enough for me. And I didn't know who this woman was, except she was one of the people interviewing me. But I knew from her presence in the room that the job was mine. And she spent 20 years on the George Street Playhouse board. She was an extraordinary recruiter. So I'd have a new board member and I'd say, now how did you come to us? Oh, Adelaide Zagoren recruited me. And I'd say, oh, okay. I'd say, oh, how did you come to us? And she said, oh, well, Adelaide. You know, Adelaide asked me and you can't say no to Adelaide. So, and I just got tired. Eventually, every new board member that would come, I'd say, how are you here? Don't tell me Adelaide, right? Adelaide. And it became a constant refrain. It's thrilling to hear so much about Douglas College, and I know how proud she was of her association with Douglas. But she also was so committed to the arts and to George Street Playhouse. And I could never believe her chronological age. It made no sense to me because she was younger than anyone else on our board, and most of our people on our staff. Her date book was full every single night of the week, months in advance. She would go to see show after show after show. She also had a wicked sense of humor. She would invite me to see shows with her in New York, and we went to see The Light in the Piazza together, which was at Lincoln Center. And the Blanchard Irving Glory Foundation had funded this production. And we're sitting there overnight, and she turned to me at intermission and said, how do you like it, David? And I said, well, I like it very much. But the young woman who's playing this role, who was supposed to have been kicked in the head as a child by a horse and not altogether there, and somehow, in some way, emotionally disabled or mentally disabled, I don't buy it. She just seems perfectly normal. And Adelaide looked at me for a minute and said, oh, I thought the young man was playing that. And I burst out laughing. And, you know, everyone I've told that story to, that was her way of saying the performance he was giving was a little wooden, you know. She was so smart, so savvy, and so generous. One of the great artists we had work at George Street was Arthur Lawrence, and Adelaide loved him, loved his work, and loved his writing, and Arthur loved her. And I remember once he said to me, you know, in the theater, you're only successful if it's in your bones. You've got to be born with it. It's got to be in your bones. And he said about Adelaide, that woman is a great philanthropist because philanthropy is in her bones. And it was. You couldn't teach it, but you could be inspired by it. And she was an extraordinary influence on us. We had a show that her wonderful Laurie Foundation sponsored, starred a woman, an actress. It was called Wit, great play called Wit, about a professor who is dying of ovarian cancer. And Suzanne Douglas played the part at our theater. And she was extraordinary in it, and Adelaide loved her performance and became very fond of her. And not only I can mention that mother-in-law was a dean of Douglas College, which helped. But Suzanne's performance was so riveting and so impactful. She went on to do 5 shows at George Street, and Adelaide loved to sponsor her. So I thought today it would be wonderful to ask Suzanne Douglas to come and sing something in honor of Adelaide. So, Suzanne.
Thank you. David, as you know, I served 5 of those 20 years on the board at George Street Playhouse with Adelaide. Did she get me on the board? Was it? Adelaide. As David referenced, my mother-in-law, she wasn't the youngest dean at Douglas, as Dean Hardman was, but she was the first African-American dean at Douglas. She began in 1976, and I'm sure she was groomed by Adelaide, and my mother-in-law, Dr. Jill Plummer Cobb, went on from there to become dean at Connecticut College and then president at Cal State Fullerton, and I'm sure it was because of all of the many years that Adelaide groomed her here that she went on. Adelaide had that effect on people. She brought out the best in us. And speaking of the best, because of Adelaide, and I wanted to bring my best, I brought on the piano today is Nat Adelaide, and Nat is responsible for many, many gold records. He was with Luther Vandross for many, many years. But also, he comes from a very rich musical heritage. His father was the great Nat Adelaide, and his uncle, Campbell. And so I just wanted to acknowledge you and let Adelaide know that I'm not amazing. But I'm going to sing a song for you that Adelaide was always so bright and up, but there are also moments in our lives where we are reminded of those that we love and care for in the smallest of things. And every time I go and have a good meal, I think of Adelaide. So it's always in those surprising moments in life where you miss someone because they remind you of something. Matt, please.
When the sun is high in the afternoon sky, you can always find something to do. But from dusk till dawn, as the clock ticks on, something happens to you. In the wee small hours of the morning, when the whole wide world is still asleep, you lie awake and think about the girl and never ever think of counting sheep. When your lonely heart has learned its lesson, you'll be hers if Suzanne Knapp, it was wonderful. And the new rapper, and that was a great song. Okay, we're still on the arts theme, but a little bit more academic thrown in. As you know, Adelaide is involved in many things, and we're going to hear now from the Mason Groves School of the Arts Associate Dean, Lisa Barrett. Lisa?
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here today representing Mason Groves. Dean Stauffer sends his regrets that he couldn't be here today. He had a long-standing commitment to speak at a conference in Milwaukee. I regret that I never met Adelaide directly, but Dean Stauffer recollected that he had many fond memories of Adelaide. They met many times over the years to discuss the future of arts at Mason Groves and in New Brunswick. One of the many things that so resonated with him about Adelaide was that her heart was always with the students. She was concerned about opening doors for our students to provide educational opportunities that they might not otherwise have had. The Blanche and Irving Laurie Foundation are longtime supporters of Mason Groves, beginning with our opera program. Adelaide, Jean Clark, and the trustees of the Laurie Foundation were instrumental in supporting the theater arts program at the Rutgers Conservatory at Shakespeare's Globe in London. At Mason Groves, we believe that the school's partnership with the Globe Theatre is one of the most important training ventures for our young actors and theater designers. This program is a year-long residential conservatory training program, and it's the only one that's offered, and it's for our Globe students. Our students work alongside professionals in the field for a full year. This provides them not only with the experience of living in London, but it trains them in the British stagecraft. So when our students graduate from Mason Groves, they're equipped with both the British and the American techniques. Our program at Shakespeare's Globe is now in its 12th year. Adelaide attended the 10th year celebration on campus. To mark this unique collaboration, we welcome back alumni from Rutgers Globe program and as current and former students to perform short skits for the audience, and that was followed by a full performance of Two Gentlemen from Verona. Adelaide was delighted to see the quality of acting stemming from this global arts program. The Mason Groves relationship with the Globe recently strengthened by the theater's decision to have two of our actors represent the Globe at its annual Sam Wanamaker Festival. This is where pairs of students from UK's leading drama schools are invited to the Globe to present scenes by Shakespeare and his contemporaries. This annual festival is a well-known springboard for aspiring actors. And now these American interlopers are part of this very prestigious opportunity. There's nothing more stunning and more rewarding than to see our Rutgers students performing alongside their British peers on the great stage of the Globe Theatre. This has been made possible by the support of Adelaide Zagoren, Jean Clark, and the Laurie Foundation. It is also important to emphasize the diversity of our acting program, not only at Shakespeare's Globe, but within the American collegiate system. Ours is a program that opens doors to a wide range of students. Adelaide Zagoren was particularly interested and sensitive to that. In addition to Laurie Foundation's support of our opera and Shakespeare's Globe, they also supported the Performing Arts Library at Mason Groves. Initially, this was solely a music library, but due to the growing strength of the dance and theater departments, this library has expanded to reflect our growing performing arts program. As Dean of Mason Groves, George mentioned that he always appreciated Adelaide's warm support and her optimistic outlook towards the possibility of arts at Mason Groves and in New Brunswick. Adelaide Zagoren's legacy lives on in the arts community, and we at Mason Groves School of the Arts are truly grateful for her vision, her genuine concern, and her support of our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. I used to run into Adelaide and to Ruth at the State Theatre regularly. are strong supporters of the State Theater in New Brunswick, which is a fantastic organization and a beautiful building. Go there if you haven't been, because it's the best in the state, hands down. We're going to now hear from Director of Major Gifts at the State Theater, Linda Vanderbilt. But I also want to mention that a pianist who's a musician, but she's with the State Theater as well, Anna Marie Works, who is, I guess, is Development Director or Vice President? Vice President for Development. We stole her for the Liberty Science Center. Linda?
Good afternoon, everyone. I have always admired strong women. There is a poignant quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that refers to Adelaide. Beautiful young people are an accident of nature, but beautiful old people are a work of art. As Director of Major Gifts at the State Theater, I met Adelaide when she was 86, so I don't have any of that history that everyone else on the stage has, and President of the Laurie Foundation. She reminded me of my wonderful great aunts and how as a child I loved to listen to their stories. So on this occasion, it seemed appropriate to share the story of my last visit with her. On a snowy Sunday afternoon in last December, I was in our donor lounge at the State Theater. The door swung open, and there she was, all bundled for the weather in her wheelchair, with that wonderful warm smile that everyone has mentioned. I was so excited to see her. Once she settled into a warm spot with other guests from the Laurie Foundation, she told me that she had spoken with her children earlier in the day. And the advice was, Mom, you should stay in, it's snowing outside. But that was not to be. She had planned a wonderful afternoon with friends at the symphony, and she wasn't going to miss it. She was so excited. It was the first time she had been out since her illness in the fall. Following the symphony performance, she enjoyed the reception with her guests and our donors. Her caregiver and I took her out to the cab, pushing the wheelchair through this slush. I kissed her goodbye and gave her a hug. I did not know that this would be the last time I would see her. I am so happy that my last loving memory of Adelaide was an afternoon watching her enjoy one of her loves, symphony music with me and her friends. Adelaide was dearly loved by our late President, Mark Jones, and all of us at the State Theater, and we thank her for her friendship and everything she has always done for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going back to what Adelaide accomplished and created here at Douglas. We're going to hear from an extern program participant of the Associate Alumni of Douglas College has this program. Adelaide set it up. It's been going full steam. Aisha Zuber will be talking about how she was a student extern, but then how she also has been a sponsor. Aisha.
Good afternoon, everyone. My time here at Douglas was a wonderful experience, from being a peer academic leader to being an RA, and just that sense of community that Douglas provided. When I started here at Douglas, I wanted to major in psychology and be an elementary school teacher. So during my junior year, I decided that I was going to apply to the Graduate School of Education here at Rutgers. And I have to be quite honest, while I had a good GPA, I wasn't really prepared, and I really didn't prepare for those GREs. But I decided to apply to the graduate school anyway, and to my disappointment, I didn't get in. And although I was disappointed, in the back of my mind, I knew that I could have prepared a little bit more, and I could have given myself more options. Shortly after my experience, I learned about the externship program here at Douglas. I looked at all of the opportunities provided, and there was one site that stood out. It was for an HIV/AIDS service organization downtown New Brunswick. The externship would allow me to shadow a health educator. So I figured, why not? This is outside of the box. Let me try it. So I decided to apply. And what a life-changing experience this externship was. I remember being at the site for 2 weeks during the spring semester of my senior year and thinking, boy, have I found my calling. The experience was awesome. I had the opportunity to shadow health educators who provided education and services to women in the state of New Jersey who were infected with or affected by HIV and AIDS. During my time at the agency, I vowed to give it my all and to see where things would go. The experience really allowed me to see that I could be interested in something else besides teaching, and that perhaps teaching elementary school students was just not my calling. The externship provided me with a foundation in the field of public health. And even after my externship ended at the agency, I was motivated more than ever and really considered public health as a profession. So much so that I decided to once again apply to graduate school, but this time for my master's in public health. And although my 2 weeks were up at the externship site, I continued to come back and volunteer, even on weekends and several times a week. During my externship, I learned to ask questions, to add value, to be confident, to network, of course be persistent, and share my academic and professional goals with the network that I had established, because I never knew who would be able to help or mentor me. And what do you know? Shortly after I graduated with my undergraduate degree here at Douglas, a health education specialist position opened up at the agency. The executive director told me she admired my persistence and work ethic. She asked me if I would be interested in the position. Of course, I accepted without hesitation, and right around that time, I was accepted into the Rutgers School of Public Health to pursue my graduate degree. Talk about a complete turnaround from wanting to be an elementary school teacher. And so today, I'm so thankful for the externship experience. Not only was I able to land my first job immediately after graduating, but I was also able to build lifelong connections, similar to the connections that I established here at Douglas. Today, while I'm still in the public health field, I'm now in a different position at the New Jersey Trauma Center at University Hospital. And now I serve as an externship sponsor. And what a gratifying experience it is for me to host Douglas women who are interested in public health. And because of my experiences, I will continue to serve as an externship sponsor because I know it's a program that I believe in and that I'm a product of. I will also remain connected to the students that I've hosted because I'm interested in their growth, success, and I want to be there because someone was there for me. Thank you.
Thousands of young women who attended Douglas who have been externs and have gotten jobs. I hired a few after they were my externs in positions. And it's because Adelaide worked hard, organized all the alumni to do the interviews, to doing the math this coming year, a true visionary. And then our last speaker, but certainly not our least speaker, as they say, Juanita Wade Wilson, class of 66, Black Alumni Network representative. Adelaide's vision included increasing the diversity and working, this is a state university, having a diverse student body, having organizations that students could fit into. The Black Alumni Network was created, and Juanita is going to speak about it.
Thank you, Jean. Good afternoon, everyone. How come they make these lecterns so tall? Stand a little bit to the side. But anyway, we've had a wonderful afternoon, haven't we? I know you should all be so just bursting with memories, and I know that there are so many untold stories in the audience. We've heard a lot from this illustrious panel, and I have the fortunate position of being the last one, and I probably should say it has all been said already, and I will excuse you for the rest of the day. However, I'm not going to do that. My name is Juanita Wade Wilson. I graduated from Douglas in 1966. Okay, can anybody else remember when that was? Most of this young woman who was an extern at Douglas. I was an extern sponsor at Douglas in the 70s. Okay, so I appreciate her remarks because I also had students come to me in my workplace 2 years, and I really love doing that. And again, that is giving back the Douglas way, and having an opportunity to really influence the lives, the thinking, of young women. So we're glad to be able to do this because Douglas prepares us to do just that. Another story has to do with Suzanne Douglas. And after the Black Alumni Network started, we, among the many other things that we did, we established a scholarship in the name of Jewel Plummer Cobb, who was her, mother-in-law. Okay, so there is always a connection. Do you see that? Always. I didn't know that until I came today and was talking with her. And she said her mother-in-law was Jewel Plummer Cobb. So I said, what do you think? How do you know? This is really incredible. So she was surprised to hear that. And the Jewel Plummer Cobb Senior Recognition Award, which was one of my ideas. I was a chairperson of the Black Alumni Network, the second chairperson, and was one of the people who suggested that such an organization be established here in Douglas. So as you can see, the legacy lives on. The Jewel Plummer Cobb Senior Recognition Award is still available for your donations. And the Black Alumni Network, once it really got going, we decided to establish a fellowship in the name of Julia Baxter Bates, who was the first known woman of color to graduate from Douglas College. Okay, so we decided to honor her. We also most recently established a fellowship in the name of Golden E. Johnson, who was one of our alums. She was the first Black municipal court judge in the city of Newark, class of 1965. She used to be my college roommate, after college roommate. So we have this connection that's constantly going. When Julia Baxter Bates was discovered, which was during Mary's term, and I met her in the Workaday place, the first woman of color to graduate. She graduated in 1938. So we established, my idea again, established a fellowship in her name for a young woman of color who was going on, in graduate studies. And we brought her to the attention of Douglas and Rutgers University because she is historic. And Mary was present at Woodlawn when we introduced her there. So that was some of the things. Why a Black Alumni Network? Now this is another side of Adelaide. She was willing to take on the challenge of some things that people weren't quite sure about. And at that time, some of us have been talking about meeting the needs of Douglas women and, this and that. We were there were civil rights times, there were other kinds of political issues going on. Adelaide had an open ear and an open heart. You know that. She was ready to listen, and she kept up with the time. She understood that there were certain things missing, and some of the Black women at that time were saying they had some interests and needs. They had no way to put this together. So we started talking with her about, a network of a sort, a way of getting together, sharing information, mixing and matching up with the other alums, the community and whatnot. She said, yes, that's a good idea. And I remember us meeting with her in her office to talk about this. She liked this kind of conversation and discussion. So along the way, we started doing some things we felt most important. We had recruitment of women of color. We had retention of women of color. First, we had to recruit them, we had to register them or enroll them. Then we had to retain them. So make sure that they finished whatever course that they chose, and then graduate. So it was a four-pronged kind of concern that we began to work at informally. Later on, in 1981, we actually formally established the Black Alumni Network. And here we had mentoring programs, and we also had cultural programs. We met usually during reunion as part of the reunion day, and we were able to, once we were formally recognized through the university, we used the facilities and resources of the university. We had the help of many others, such as Flora, who's sitting down there, and others who helped. We also have here present former band chair people in the audience now. So all of us were working together, trying to create a place that was more understanding and more responsive to the particular needs of minority students. We also were the first, I think you call them now, Valerie, Affinity. Okay, those are the organizations that come along beside are part of the associate alumni. But the Latino, okay, alumni network came after us. We had the young alumni network and on and on and on. The Asian young women have established a group so that there was a recognizing of that kind of need. Not to separate these groups from Douglas, but to bring them closer in and to bring Douglas closer to these women who were then going to go out into the world and make a place. And so understanding everything was shared and we all worked together. So we want to say that Adelaide, I think, is if the word multitask represents anybody, don't you think it would be her? She was incredible. And all the things that have been said already, I don't need to repeat those things for you, but I do want you to know that Adelaide was a very diverse woman. She's a Renaissance woman, really. She was able to see, she had such vision, such hope, and she really encouraged. She was an inspiration to everybody. We loved going and meeting with her about many issues. For instance, when I first graduated from Douglas, there were only 5 African American women in my class. Can you imagine that? Hundreds? And so this was something that we talked about. You know, what does this mean? What's going on with the recruitment? What's going on with all these other things? So we began to work on some of those things. You know, is it financial aid? What, you know, Douglas still is a secret in the state of New Jersey. Do you know that? There are so many students who don't know of this wonderful place for an excellent education at sort of moderate cost, although it's going up. But talking about issues in Adelaide, at that time I was on the board of directors of the Alumni Association. I was on the South Africa Divestment Committee. And we met and talked about diverse because Douglas and I guess Rutgers had money invested in South Africa in different ways. And that's why I'm touching upon some of these sort of sensitive social political issues, because that was going on then. I don't want us to leave here thinking this is a nicey kind of thing. But Adelaide also struggled with some of the challenges of the times. So Douglas decided to fund the scholarship of a young woman from South Africa. And we already knew of a young man who was studying for his MBA at the Rutgers Graduate School of Business. His wife was in South Africa, ready to come. So we knew him, so she was invited to come. And so she became the South African experience. And Adelaide was really at the forefront of bringing her here. And we learned so much. So they, as a couple and a family, became part of our education. Because we began to understand what was apartheid, what apartheid was all about. We understood the struggles and challenges that they had faced. And there was a lot of interfacing with them and with Adelaide and all. She was involved with where they want to live and all kinds of things. So he graduated with his MBA, she graduated with her BA degree, and they went back to South Africa. And they're doing very well. I had the opportunity to go and visit them in South Africa. So you can see how this kind of goes along and goes along, and you still stay in touch and all. And we hope that the goodwill of Douglas spreads and continues to spread. So that's why we're always asking for your support, financial support and otherwise, of the various programs of the Associate Alumni and, the other things that are going on here. So I think I'm going to leave you now with that thought, to know that there are always untold stories, but there are always people working on the sides on many of these things, and that there's a place for you. We have the young alums here. We have some of us who are slightly older, and you may be sending someone to Douglas. My own daughter graduated from Douglas after I graduated. She's 30 years behind me, so she's out waving the, banner of Douglas wherever she goes. So I'm very proud of her. And Adelaide was instrumental, and she knew her and that kind of thing. So it takes the personal touch means so what? Much. The personal touch means so much. And obviously, Adelaide Zagoren has touched so many of us in this room and those beyond. Okay? So we want to continue with that spirit. Her legacy will never die. She's inside of me. When I think about this, I said, this picture is not big enough. Because she fills this room. She fills this place. Thank you.
As Maria said, Adelaide touched all of us, but I think the person in this room she touched the most was her daughter. And Laura Zagoren Barra, class of 70, is going to say a few words about her mother. Laura?
It's hard to believe how fast the months fly by, and yet it seemed like yesterday. Mom was here with us, directing some event or giving us her wisdom and guidance. There isn't a day that goes by, or a minute for that matter, that I don't think about her or what she would have done or advice she would have given me. When Valerie told me about today's event she was planning, I knew this was the appropriate place for all this to happen. I was a bit overwhelmed at the magnitude of it, and just could never think I'd be able to stand here in front of you as I've done so many times before, because I was always choked up and teary-eyed, and she was right in front of me, listening and always proud. Today, here I am, imagining she's here, and the front row still beaming. It's difficult, but I'm going to try. You know my mom, the woman who was educated here at Douglas, and as so many of you have said, never left. Her heart was always here at Douglas and in the New Brunswick area. Here is where she lived her entire life and proud of it. How do you begin to talk about a woman who has not only done it all, but also done it with expertise, honor, pride, and humility? How do you talk about a woman with such a list of credentials that you've heard? I will never forget a few years ago, I went into a card store to buy my mother a Mother's Day card. I always stood there, forever reading all the cards until I found just the right one. This particular day, I was very teary-eyed, as the ones I picked up were also poignant. A woman came up to me to straighten the cards and said, "Are you all right?" I answered, "Sure, but the cards are just so special," and they seemed to describe my mother perfectly. She commented after a forceful sigh, "You must be so lucky to have such a wonderful mother. I can't stand mine. I don't even want to send her a card, but I guess I have to." I stood there, speechless, flabbergasted and dumbfounded, and finally muttered, "I'm so sorry. Everyone deserves a good mother." I thought, I'm really so lucky to have my mother. There's so many times my friends ask me, "Does your mother take in adoptions?" I would assume you know my mother and that's why you're here, so you know she was so special and anyone would have been proud and eager and happy to call her their mother. Mom was always determined to give my brother and me the values she thought important. She taught us to be determined and driven, to follow the paths we wanted, be independent and confident, and able to have our own thoughts and beliefs. To this point, she might have met her match with me because I often had to stand up to her and get what I wanted or needed. As a teenager, I'm sure I was a bit hard to handle. She taught me to have a sense of family. We always spent summers together with family at the shore or vacationing together. She's always been part of her grandchildren's lives from the beginning. As they grew older, she started bringing them on trips, and sometimes all of us all over the world. She took the 10 of us on a dream-of-a-lifetime safari to Africa. While she was at Douglas, I had a whirlwind tour, being her roommate, learning our way to Elbow Array through Buckingham Palace, seeing the famous Jungfrau, the Vatican P in Brussels, which I have to say she refused to say the word because it was bad. And she wouldn't. The remnants of the Berlin Wall, the Turkish mosques, the Vatican, Trevi Fountain, the beauty of Provence, and the exhilarating helicopter ride over the Grand Canyon. These weren't just sites for us to visit. It was a time we spent together and really got to know one another. It wasn't just the travels that have drawn our family together. Mom's home was always welcoming, and she had parties for everything and for any occasion she could come up with, even a goodbye party for her piano that she sent off to her grandchildren in Florida, which she hoped would learn to play, and she was finally having difficulty playing anymore herself. She hired a person to play and even sent out invitations to her friends and neighbors and had a tea party send-off. If a piano send-off was a party, you can only imagine a normal party, what it was like. Need I say more? Mom taught us to love nature and scouting. She taught us it was necessary to leave a place better than we found it. This was true both in nature and in our communities. We were taught to involve ourselves in our communities. Mom taught us faith and religion, not only in schooling, but in a continual celebration of holidays and being together to know who we were and where we came from. Mom made education a priority for both my brother Bob and me and all her grandchildren. She was always there to help, encourage, and guide us in every aspect of our educations. Mom instilled in us a sense of fairness and justice and to treat all people with respect, fairly, and the same. She made us care about people and who they are and how they feel and always try and help those less fortunate than ourselves. Mom has shown us the importance of friendship. I witnessed my mother and her sisters be the best of friends, and she has become that special kind of friend to me. As I say these final words to you, I know they can be said for all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren and probably each of you. Mom was always there when we needed her, or even when we didn't know we needed her. She went out of her way to help and listen and always try to come up with solutions we didn't even know were problems. She always knew the right thing to say and seemed to understand me sometimes better than I knew myself. Mom was the person I could talk to for good or bad. I could share anything with her. She was my friend. This is a bad part. I laughed with her and cried with her. She brought us nothing but happiness. She was a role model for all of us. As I look back at that poor lonely soul in the card store, I thank my lucky stars I was given the best mother in the world. And I'm so glad I could share her with you. I'm going to skip the next part. For over 25 years, Mom served on the board of the Blanchard Memorial Foundation, and she served as president for 19 years as president. She did as much for the foundation as she did here at Douglas, installing new procedures and manuals and even ways to deal with our organizations. When she retired as president, I was elected. She only wanted to observe me in my new position so she could see that she trained me right and well, and I saw the pride she took in the good job I was doing. During her last months, Mom spent some time in a rehab in Hackettstown, New Jersey, near my home. She was determined to be able to get out of bed and walk and be able to talk clearly and write legibly again. Even at this time, she managed to see what was happening around her and call in the administrators one at a time and tell them how to better run their facility. I just couldn't believe she still had to try and be in charge and try to improve the community around her. It was during her stay here, she scribbled out on a slip of paper an idea she had for a scholarship program she wanted to present to Douglas as her legacy. Valerie and I, along with the executive director of the Laurie Foundation, worked out the particulars as to her specifications on this little slip of paper. So as one of her last requests, an Adelaide Zagoren scholarship and fellowship is in process of being established. Let me end by thanking each of you for all the beautiful letters I received telling of your experiences with Mom. As difficult as it was to read them, it was wonderful to see how she touched so many people in different ways. I will always cherish those kind wishes and anecdotes. Thank you to all the people who put so much hard work into today's memorial celebration. I'm sure Mom is watching from above and happy to know how much her life meant to all of us and the lives of all the people she touched. Thank you.
Is her mother's daughter. And she's a lucky woman to have her as her mom. So I'm going to thank the speakers and the performers for today. Adelaide would have loved it. And as we heard today from everyone, and as we know, Adelaide had a full life. She's a role model for her family, but for all of us. And she helped Douglas adapt and change over the many years that she's been involved. A great philanthropist, always young, and really a natural leader who believed in fairness and justice. She attracted people to her, and most of us know you cannot say no to Adelaide. So yes, there is still really only one Adelaide, and always will be. She's a true, beautiful work of art. Now I want to thank you all for being here and for celebrating Adelaide Marcus Zagoren. And we invite you to go to a reception right across in the library, the Douglas Library, right next door. After we first stand and sing the alma mater. This is the Douglas College alma mater.